Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're exploring a fascinating concept, coincidence or synchronicity in our lives. We've got some excerpts from David Richo's audiobook, The Power of Coincidence, and I am really excited to unpack this with you.
I think Richo's work is all about how these seemingly random events,
Hmm.
might actually be guiding us on our own personal journeys.
Yeah,
He goes deep into the psychology and spirituality, but behind these coincidences,
right.
so we can kind of try to understand, what they might mean for us and how to use them for growth.
Yeah, I love that. And I think we've all had those moments where something happens and you're just like, wait, is the universe trying to tell me
Yeah.
something? So how does Richo approach this idea of coincidence?
Well, he ties it to what he calls the givens of human existence.
Okay.
And these are those inevitable challenges we all face. And he argues that they are not just conditions of existence, but also conditions of evolving.
Ooh, I'm intrigued. What exactly are these givens?
So he outlines six. The first one is that we are inherently alone in facing significant life events, even death.
Mm,
We might have support, but ultimately we grapple with these things individually.
yeah, that's a bit sobering, but I think it's true. We can't fully shield ourselves from those big moments, no matter how much we love and are loved by others.
Right. And then there's the fact that everything is constantly changing. Nothing stays the same.
Right.
This can be unsettling, but it also kind of pushes us to find meaning beyond, the things that are temporary.
Yeah, it reminds me of that saying, the only constant is change, but how do we move past that feeling of unease that can come with impermanence?
That's where the third given comes in, which is that life is inherently unpredictable.
Okay.
We try to control things, we crave certainty,
Yeah.
but embracing the unpredictable actually helps us become more adaptable and resourceful.
So rather than fighting against the unknown, we lean into it.
Exactly. And the fourth given is that suffering, both physical and emotional, is an inevitable part of life. And that kind of leads to the fifth given, that life isn't always fair. We
Right.
might face injustice, and that can be frustrating, but can also kind of motivate us to work towards a fairer world.
That makes me think about those moments when you feel completely overwhelmed, like life is throwing more at you than you can possibly handle. Is that connected to these givens?
Yes, that's actually the sixth given,
Okay.
that we
Yeah.
will inevitably face situations that feel beyond our capacity.
Mm.
And Richo argues that these experiences, as difficult as they are, can open us up to grace and can help us grow.
So he's saying that these givens, these tough realities, aren't there to victimize us, but to actually push us towards evolution.
Precisely.
That's pretty cool.
It's about how we respond to them.
Okay.
We can react in a childish way,
Yeah.
denying, clinging, feeling entitled.
Right.
Or we can meet these givens with adult responses, acceptance, seeking support, resourcefulness.
That's a powerful shift in perspective. But how do we actually make that shift? How do we move from those knee-jerk reactions to those more mature responses?
And that's where Richo's concept of synchronicity comes into play.
Okay.
He suggests that those seemingly random coincidences become particularly meaningful when we view them through the lens of these givens.
Like those aha moments where things just click into place, like they could be signs or confirmations or even wake-up calls on our path.
Yes, he sees these synchronicities as potential guides,
Right.
helping us to navigate those challenges and opportunities that are presented by life's givens.
Yeah.
It's like the universe is kind of nudging us to pay attention.
Yeah, I find that idea so fascinating, but it's one thing to acknowledge these challenges. It's another to have strategies for actually dealing with them. Does Richo offer any guidance on that?
He does. Richo provides very specific tools for handling life's predicaments.
Okay.
He talks about facing fear, expressing anger responsibly, being more assertive, managing guilt, coping with betrayal, and even knowing when to seek professional help.
So he's not just presenting these concepts, he's giving us concrete ways to actually apply them to our lives.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And throughout, he really emphasizes self-compassion.
Right.
He's reminding us that we are all works in progress, we're going to make mistakes, and it's about, learning and moving forward.
Yeah, that's a crucial reminder. It's easy to beat ourselves up when things get tough, but we need to be gentle with ourselves.
Absolutely. And even in the face of devastation, Richo says we have this incredible, inner capacity for restoration. Even chaos can be a precursor to new creation.
So even when things feel broken, there's still hope. There's still the potential for growth and change.
Exactly. And sometimes Even finding a little humor in our struggles,
Yeah.
can help us work through them. It's about finding that lightness even in the darkness.
I love that. It's like that saying, if you can't laugh at yourself, life is going to seem a whole lot longer. So we've got these givens, these tools for dealing with life's curveballs. Where does this idea of the hero's journey fit in?
Richo connects all of this to that classic archetype.
Okay.
He sees life as a journey with 3 stages: leaving our comfort zones, a period of struggle, and then a return with new wisdom and compassion.
So we're all on these epic quests, facing trials and tribulations, but ultimately emerging stronger and more whole. That's a really empowering framework.
It is, and it helps us to kind of find meaning in our experiences, even the painful ones.
Speaking of finding meaning, I'm curious about Richo's perspective on dreams.
Yeah,
Does he see them as connected to this idea of the hero's journey at all?
he does. He believes dreams reveal our hidden selves and point to kind of unlived potentials.
Okay.
It's like our subconscious is sending us messages, offering guidance, confirming or challenging our choices.
So it's not just random images flashing through our minds while we sleep. They might actually hold valuable insights.
Right. And Richo advocates for using what are called active imagination techniques to unlock the wisdom contained within our dreams. It's like we're all carrying around these secret maps, and learning to decipher them can help us kind of find our way.
That's fascinating. Make me want to start paying much closer attention to my dreams. Now, you mentioned that Richo also delves into the realm of spirituality.
Yeah.
What are some of the key ideas he explores there?
He suggests there are 3 paths for spiritual growth:
Okay.
letting go of the ego, accepting the givens of life, and cultivating universal compassion.
So it's about moving beyond like a self-centered view to a place of greater connection and understanding.
Exactly. And he believes that synchronicity plays a key role in each of these paths, guiding us towards a more compassionate way of being.
Interesting.
It's like those coincidences are little breadcrumbs leading us toward a deeper truth.
That's such a beautiful image. So for Richo, compassion is really at the heart of spiritual growth.
It is. He sees it as moving us beyond self-concern to genuine care for others, which ultimately, creates a sense of interconnectedness and motivates us to contribute to a better world.
I think that resonates with a lot of people. We all crave that feeling of connection, that sense of belonging to something larger than ourselves. But how do we cultivate that compassion, especially when faced with so much suffering in the world?
Richo sees love as a truly transformative force.
Okay.
He says it helps us transcend our ego-driven desires and connect with a deeper sense of wholeness.
So love isn't just a feeling, it's a force that can actually change us, like help us evolve.
That's right. And he introduces a really interesting concept called staying and seeing.
What does that mean? Exactly.
It's about learning to be present with whatever arises,
Okay.
without judgment or resistance.
Okay.
It's about shifting our focus from, the immediate problem to the larger context.
So instead of getting caught up in the drama of a situation, we kind of take a step back and try to see it from a wider perspective. I like that.
It's a powerful practice,
Yeah.
and mindfulness comes in here as a key spiritual practice.
Right. Mindfulness being that practice of paying attention to the present moment without judgment.
Exactly. It's about detaching from this kind of constant chatter of our thoughts and emotions, allowing us to see our experiences with greater clarity and compassion.
So it's like hitting the pause button on our internal dialogue and simply observing what is.
Yeah.
So how does this staying and seeing tie into the bigger picture of Richo's work?
He sees it as a way to access what he calls the between space.
And what is that exactly?
It's the fertile space between opposites, where creativity, healing, and transformation occurs. It's the space between ego and self, cause and chance, unconscious and conscious, effort and grace, letting go and going on.
So it's in those liminal spaces, those in-between moments, that the real magic happens.
Exactly. It's about embracing paradox and recognizing that life is not always black and white, but rather a tapestry, woven from shades of gray. And staying and seeing can help us find that space.
Yeah, it sounds like Richo is suggesting that even though life can be really challenging, those very challenges can actually lead us to profound growth and a deeper understanding of ourselves. Like, it's not about avoiding the hard stuff, but about learning to dance with it.
That's a great way to put it, yeah. He's reminding us that we're not alone on this journey.
Yeah.
We have inner resources, supportive relationships, even those synchronicities to guide us along the way.
Yeah, it's like we have this whole support system, both internal and external, to help us navigate the ups and downs of life. But I think for a lot of people, the idea of accepting these givens, these difficult realities, can feel like giving up. You
Mhm.
know, like if I accept that life is unpredictable or that suffering is inevitable, won't that just make me passive?
That's a really important question, and I think Richo would say that acceptance is not about resignation or passivity.
Okay.
It's actually a very active choice.
Okay.
It's about acknowledging the reality of a situation
Hmm.
so that we can then choose how we want to respond to it.
So it's about taking back our power, not giving it away.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we may not be able to control what happens to us, but we can control how we choose to respond. And that choice, that active, conscious response, is where our true power lies.
I really appreciate that perspective. It feels much more empowering than just passively accepting whatever life throws our way.
Yeah, and I think that's what Richo is ultimately getting at.
Right.
He wants to help us move from a place of fear and reactivity to a place of empowerment and conscious choice.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, earlier you mentioned that Richa offers some specific tools for dealing with life's predicaments. I'd love to hear more about those.
Okay, let's dive into a few.
Okay.
He emphasizes that when fear arises, the most effective approach is not to suppress it, but to acknowledge it, feel it fully, and then act as if it couldn't stop you.
Wow. That's really interesting. It seems counterintuitive to lean into fear, but I can see how facing it head on could actually be more liberating than trying to avoid it. What about anger? How does he suggest we handle that?
He suggests expressing it responsibly and directly to the person involved
Okay.
without blame or violence,
Okay.
which can be truly transformative.
So it's about finding a healthy outlet for that energy, communicating our needs assertively without letting anger control us. Does he have suggestions for cultivating that assertiveness?
He does. Richo encourages us to recognize when we're being passive in our interactions
Mhm.
and to consciously practice standing our ground without resorting to aggression.
So it's about finding that balance between honoring our own needs and respecting the needs of others. What about those times when we're really down on ourselves, full of self-doubt or guilt? Does he have any tools for dealing with that?
He has a beautiful technique for those moments when we're feeling fragmented. He suggests imagining a kind inner voice offering words of comfort and encouragement.
Hmm.
It's a way of reminding ourselves that we are not our mistakes, that we are capable of learning and growing.
It seems like a practice in self-compassion, which I think is so crucial, especially when we're struggling. It's about offering ourselves the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a close friend. Are there any other tools you find particularly helpful?
Richo acknowledges that sometimes we find ourselves kind of stuck,
Yeah.
paralyzed by indecision.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of forcing a solution, he suggests practicing the art of pausing,
Okay.
allowing ourselves to simply be in the stuckness
Right.
and trust that clarity will eventually emerge.
Yeah, that can be so challenging. Our minds are wired to want to figure things out immediately.
Yeah.
But you're saying that sometimes surrender is more powerful than striving.
Yes, and this aligns perfectly with that concept of synchronicity,
Right.
that even in those moments of seeming stagnation, something greater might be working behind the scenes. It's about trusting the process
Mm,
and believing that there's a path unfolding that will eventually become clear.
I love that. What about guilt? Does he address how to deal with that?
He does.
Yeah.
He suggests making amends where possible and committing to changing our behavior in the future. It's helping us move beyond self-recrimination and take responsibility for our actions.
It's about acknowledging our mistakes, making things right where we can, and then letting go of the guilt that can keep us stuck in the past. What about those times when we're on the receiving end of criticism or hurtful words? Does he offer any guidance on how to handle those situations?
He encourages us to resist the urge to retaliate and instead communicate our feelings directly and honestly.
Okay.
This allows us to set boundaries while maintaining a spirit of kindness.
So instead of getting caught in a cycle of defensiveness and attack, we choose a more vulnerable and authentic response. What about betrayal? That can be such a painful experience. Does Richo offer any advice for healing from that kind of hurt?
He cautions against shutting down or building
Yeah.
walls to protect ourselves from future hurt.
Right.
He says it's important to grieve the loss and learn from the experience, but also to remain open to the possibility of future love.
It's about recognizing that vulnerability is not a weakness, but rather a necessary ingredient for intimacy and connection.
Exactly.
And lastly, I think it's important to acknowledge that sometimes we need more support than we can find on our own.
Yeah,
Does Richo address this at all?
he does. He reminds us that we are not meant to go through life's challenges alone. He emphasizes the importance of seeking professional help when we are facing difficulties that feel overwhelming or beyond our capacity to handle.
Yeah, there's no shame in asking for support. In fact, it's a sign of strength and self-awareness to recognize when we need help navigating difficult terrain.
Absolutely. And all of these tools, they ultimately point back to Richo's core message,
Mhm.
of embracing the givens of life.
Right.
He encourages us to recognize that even in the face of suffering, injustice, and unpredictability, there's a path towards growth and transformation.
It's about shifting our perspective,
Mhm.
viewing these challenges not as obstacles, but as opportunities for deepening our understanding of ourselves and the world around us. Now, earlier we were talking about the significance of
Hmm.
dreams, but I'd love to dig a little deeper into that. You mentioned that Richo sees dreams as a way of accessing our hidden selves and unlived potentials. Can you elaborate on that?
He believes dreams speak to us in the language of metaphor and symbol, offering, guidance, confirmation, or even challenges to our waking lives. It's like our subconscious is communicating with us through these nocturnal narratives, offering a different perspective on our experiences.
So it's not just random images flashing through our minds while we sleep. They might actually hold valuable insights.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
And Richo's a big advocate for engaging with our dreams through what are called active imagination techniques,
Okay.
using our conscious minds to kind of explore the deeper meaning that's contained within those dream images.
Can you give us an example of what that might look like?
Let's say you have a recurring dream of being lost in a forest. Right. Instead of just dismissing it as like a random anxiety dream, you could spend some time reflecting on the symbolism. What does the forest represent to you? What emotions come up when you imagine yourself lost in that setting? What might your subconscious be trying to tell you?
So it's about bringing those dream images into our conscious awareness and then exploring them with curiosity and an open mind.
Exactly. Richo sees it as a way to kind of bridge the gap between our conscious and unconscious minds, to tap into a deeper level of wisdom and understanding. He also suggests paying attention to recurring dreams in particular,
Why is that?
because they often point to unresolved issues or patterns in our lives.
Mhm.
It's like our subconscious is saying, hey, pay attention. There's something here that needs your attention.
That makes sense. And are there any other types of dreams that he considers particularly significant?
Yes, he highlights the significance of what are called archetypal dreams. These are dreams that contain universal themes and symbols that
Mm.
resonate across cultures and time. So, for example, dreams of flying, falling, or being chased.
Yeah, it's like those dreams are tapping into something deeper, something that connects us to a collective unconscious.
Exactly. Richo believes these dreams offer us glimpses into our kind of spiritual journey, our connection to something larger than ourselves.
Interesting.
It's like they're offering us a glimpse of the hero's journey on a grander scale.
Wow, that's powerful. It's a reminder that we're all part of this larger human story, connected by these shared experiences and archetypes.
Right. And he encourages us to approach dream work with curiosity and an open mind,
Yeah.
recognizing that there's no one right interpretation.
Mm-hmm.
It's about finding the meaning that resonates most deeply for us, the meaning that helps us understand ourselves and our journey with greater clarity.
I love that idea that our dreams can actually inform and guide our waking lives. It's like we're receiving messages from a deeper part of ourselves if only we learn to listen.
And sometimes those messages might come through in the form of those synchronicities we were talking about earlier.
Right.
It's about recognizing that our inner and outer worlds are constantly interacting, informing, and influencing each other in profound ways.
I've always been a bit skeptical of the whole synchronicity thing.
Yeah.
It's easy to dismiss it as coincidence or wishful thinking. But hearing you talk about it in the context of Richo's work, it starts to feel less woo-woo and more like a genuine phenomenon worth exploring.
I appreciate that. And I think a lot of people share that initial skepticism. But when we start to pay attention, to really tune into those seemingly random events that feel infused with meaning, it can open up a whole new dimension of experience.
It's like we're tuning into a subtler frequency, becoming more sensitive to the whispers of the universe, as you said earlier.
Exactly. And those whispers can be incredibly powerful. They can offer us guidance, confirmation, or even challenges to our current path.
I'm really intrigued by this idea. It feels like there's a whole world of meaning waiting to be uncovered if we just learn to pay attention. So we've talked about the givens of life, these practical tools for dealing with challenges, and this fascinating exploration of dreams and synchronicities. How does all of this tie into Richo's exploration of spirituality?
Well, he suggests that true spiritual growth involves kind of a shift in perspective.
Right.
It's a movement away from a self-centered, ego-driven worldview. towards a more expansive and compassionate way of being.
So it's about transcending our limited sense of self and recognizing our interconnectedness with all beings.
Exactly. Letting go of ego, he believes, involves releasing our attachment to, being right, to controlling outcomes, to needing things to be a certain way. It's about embracing humility and recognizing that we are all part of something larger than ourselves.
It's about surrendering to the flow of life, trusting that even when things don't go according to our plan, there's a greater wisdom at work.
Yes, and this connects beautifully to the second path he outlines, accepting the givens of life.
Yeah.
We've already talked about these givens, like loneliness, impermanence, and unpredictability. True spiritual growth involves embracing these givens, not with resignation, but with a deep understanding that these challenges are an inherent part of the human experience.
It's about saying yes to life in all its messiness and complexity, recognizing that even the difficult experiences offer us opportunities for growth and transformation. But honestly, sometimes it's hard to see those opportunities when you're in the midst of those challenges.
I understand that. It's easy to get caught up in the immediacy of our experience and lose sight of the bigger picture.
Right.
But Richo would say that those moments of challenge are precisely when we need to cultivate that staying and seeing perspective.
To step back and observe our experience with a bit more detachment, to try to see the situation from a wider lens.
Exactly. And it's from this place of acceptance that the third path, cultivating universal compassion, can truly flourish. When we recognize our shared humanity, our interconnectedness with all beings, it becomes harder to turn away from the suffering of others. We naturally feel a greater sense of empathy and a desire to, alleviate that suffering.
So compassion isn't just a nice sentiment, it's a powerful force that can actually motivate us to make a difference in the world.
That's right. And Richo believes that this compassion, this love for all beings, is at the heart of true spiritual awakening. He suggests that as we cultivate this compassion, we begin to experience a deep sense of peace and joy that transcends the ups and downs of everyday life.
It's like we're tapping into a wellspring of love that resides within each of us, a love that has the power to heal and transform not only ourselves, but the world around us.
Beautifully said. And Richo suggests that synchronicity, those meaningful coincidences, can play a powerful role in supporting us on this spiritual journey.
Yeah, it's like those synchronicities are reminders that we're on the right path, that we're not alone in this journey. And they can also serve as catalysts for spiritual growth, nudging us towards greater awareness and compassion.
Exactly. It's about paying attention to those synchronicities, recognizing them as potential signposts on our spiritual path.
And trusting that even when we feel lost or confused, there's a greater wisdom guiding us. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
Yeah.
I'm really starting to appreciate the depth and breadth of Richo's work. He's weaving together psychology, spirituality, and this fascinating exploration of coincidence and meaning.
Yeah, he's really offering us a comprehensive framework for kind of understanding the human experience and for navigating the complexities of life with greater awareness and purpose.
Now, earlier you mentioned this idea of staying and seeing as a practice for cultivating mindful awareness. I'd love to explore that a bit further. Can you walk us through what that practice actually looks like?
Absolutely. Staying and seeing is all about cultivating a deep presence with whatever arises in our experience.
Okay.
It's about staying present with our thoughts, emotions, and sensations without judgment or resistance.
So it's about observing our inner landscape with curiosity and compassion rather than getting swept away by the drama of our thoughts and feelings.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that our thoughts and emotions are like clouds passing through the sky.
Okay.
They come and go, but the sky itself remains, vast and unchanging.
So it's about finding that sense of spaciousness within ourselves, that place of stillness and peace that exists beneath the surface of our, fluctuating thoughts and emotions.
Precisely. And Richo suggests that this practice of staying and seeing can help us to kind of detach from the drama of our minds and see our experiences with greater clarity and understanding.
It's like we're taking a step back from the chaos and noise of our internal world and finding a place of calm observation.
And from this place of calm, we can begin to see things more objectively,
Right.
without the distortions of our judgments and biases.
Right. It's about cultivating a more mindful approach to life, responding to challenges with greater wisdom and compassion. And how might this practice affect our relationships with others?
Richo believes that this practice can enhance our ability to connect with others.
Okay.
When we are present and grounded in ourselves, we're better able to listen deeply to others and to offer them our full attention.
It's about creating a space for genuine connection where we can truly see and be seen by others.
Yes, and he suggests that this practice can also help us to become more aware of the synchronicities in our lives.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
those meaningful coincidences that often go unnoticed when we're caught up in the busyness of our minds.
It's like we're tuning into a subtler frequency, becoming more sensitive to the whispers of the universe that are always guiding us towards our highest good.
And as we cultivate this awareness, we may find that those synchronicities become more frequent and more meaningful,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
offering us a deeper sense of purpose and connection.
Yeah, it's like we're aligning ourselves with the flow of life, allowing the universe to guide us towards our destiny. But what about those times when life throws us a curveball? You know, when those givens we talked about earlier feel particularly heavy, how can this practice of staying and seeing help us in those moments?
That's a great question. And I think in those moments, staying and seeing becomes even more crucial, because it allows us to kind of create a space between ourselves and the intensity of our experience.
Okay.
Instead of getting swept away by the wave of emotion, we learn to ride the wave with a bit more awareness and composure.
So it's not about denying or suppressing our feelings, but about finding a way to hold those feelings with a bit more spaciousness.
Exactly. And then by doing so, we create the possibility for a different kind of response,
Okay.
a response that comes from a place of wisdom and compassion rather than reactivity and fear.
I love that it's like we're learning to be the eye of the storm, to find that place of stillness within ourselves, even when the world around us feels chaotic.
And in those moments of stillness, we might just glimpse those synchronicities,
Yeah.
those whispers of guidance from the universe that can help us to kind of navigate the challenges and find our way back to a place of peace and clarity.
Yeah, this has been such an enlightening conversation. I'm really starting to grasp the depth and richness of Richo's work, and I'm excited to explore these ideas further in my own life.
That's wonderful to hear. And remember, this is a journey, not a destination.
Right.
There's no need to rush or to try to master everything all at once.
It's about taking it one step at a time, one breath at a time, paying attention to those whispers of guidance, those synchronicities that appear along the way.
Exactly. And trusting that even when things feel challenging or uncertain, there's a deeper wisdom guiding us, leading us toward wholeness and fulfillment.
This feels like a good place to pause for now. But before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how we can apply this idea of staying and seeing to a concrete situation,
Yeah.
something our listeners can take away and experiment with in their own lives.
Absolutely. Let's take a common scenario. Like, imagine you're feeling stressed and overwhelmed by a looming deadline at work. You know, maybe you're feeling anxious or maybe even a little resentful that you have to deal with this pressure.
I think we've all been there. Those deadlines can really sneak up on you.
Right. So instead of getting caught up in that mental swirl of, I can't believe this is happening or I'm never going to get this done, try shifting your focus to your breath. Just notice the sensation of your breath as you inhale and exhale.
So we're using our breath as an anchor to kind of bring us back to the present moment.
Exactly. And as you focus on your breath, notice what other sensations arise in your body. Maybe you feel tension in your shoulders, tightness in your chest, or even a knot in your stomach. Just observe those sensations without judgment.
So it's like we're acknowledging those feelings without letting them take over.
Right. We're creating a space for those feelings to exist without getting swept away by them. Now, as you observe these sensations, you might notice thoughts popping up. Thoughts like, I'm not good enough, or I'm going to fail. Just notice those thoughts too. Label them gently, maybe saying to yourself, thinking.
So we're not trying to suppress or argue with those thoughts. We're just acknowledging their presence.
Exactly. We're simply observing them as mental events, like clouds passing through the sky. They're not inherently good or bad. They're just thoughts. And as you practice this observation, you might notice that the intensity of those thoughts and feelings begins to lessen.
It's like we're creating a space between ourselves and our reactions, which allows us to respond to the situation with a bit more clarity and composure.
You got it. Now, once you've cultivated this sense of spaciousness around your internal experience, you can start to shift your attention outward. Look around the room. Notice the colors and shapes of the objects around you. Listen to the sounds in your environment. Engage your senses fully.
So we're grounding ourselves in the present moment by connecting with our senses.
Right. And as you do this, you might find that your perspective on the situation begins to shift. Maybe you realize that the deadline, while challenging, is not the end of the world. Maybe you remember that you've faced similar challenges in the past, and you've always found a way through.
Yeah, it's like by stepping back and creating some distance from the immediacy of the situation, we can access a wider perspective, a more grounded and balanced view.
Exactly. And this shift in perspective can be incredibly empowering
Right.
because it reminds us that we have choices. We're not simply victims of our circumstances.
I love that. It's about reclaiming our agency, remembering that we have the power to choose how we respond to the challenges that life throws our way.
And that choice, that act of conscious response, is where true freedom lies. It's where we tap into that between space,
Right.
the fertile ground for creativity, healing, and transformation.
So it's not about avoiding or denying the challenges, but about meeting them with a mindful presence, a willingness to stay and see what unfolds.
Beautifully said. And who knows, as you practice this, you might even start to notice those synchronicities, those meaningful coincidences popping up to guide you along the way.
It's like the universe is conspiring to support us if we're open to receiving those messages.
Exactly. It's about trusting that there's a deeper wisdom at play, a wisdom that's always guiding us towards wholeness and fulfillment, even when we can't see the whole picture, even when things feel challenging or uncertain.
I think that's such a hopeful and empowering message to end on. It's a reminder that we're not alone on this journey, that we have resources and support available to us, both within and beyond ourselves.
Absolutely. And that by cultivating this practice of staying and seeing, we can access those resources and tap into that deeper wisdom that is always available to us.
Well, this has been an incredible deep dive. I'm feeling so inspired to apply these ideas in my own life and to see what unfolds.
I encourage you to do so. And remember, you don't have to do it all at once.
Right.
Start with one small step,
Yeah,
one practice that resonates with you,
right.
and see where it leads.
That's great advice. It's about embracing the journey, trusting the process, and being open to the unexpected wonders that await.
And as you move through your week, pay attention to those synchronicities, those moments where the universe seems to be whispering a message just for you.
Yeah, I'll definitely be on the lookout for those cosmic breadcrumbs. This has been such a thought-provoking and inspiring conversation. Thank you for guiding me through this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure. Remember, the power to transform your life lies within you. Embrace the journey.
Yes.
Stay curious and trust the unfolding of your own unique path.
That's a beautiful message to end on. So to all of you listening, I hope this deep dive has sparked some curiosity, some new ways of thinking about the challenges and opportunities that life presents. Maybe you're feeling inspired to explore your own relationship with coincidence and meaning. Maybe you're curious about those givens in your own life, those places where you might be resisting what is. Whatever it is, I encourage you to embrace the mystery, keep your heart open, and trust the journey. Until next time, keep diving deep.
Farewell, and may you find joy and wonder in the unfolding of your own extraordinary story.